I'm Gold Derby editor Daniel Montgomery here with The Last Days of Ptolemy Gray cinematographer Hilda Mercado. It's a complex series with a lot of flashbacks and a main character who is undergoing very drastic mental changes. What were some of the early discussions and considerations for crafting the look, or really the multiple looks of this story?
One of the basic things about that called for like the look and to call for these various types of looks was the story itself. The story about this elderly man that is just going through dementia and all these stages of dementia, because it was not only like having dementia, it was like sort of hallucinations, flashbacks, memories, things that he was in his right mind, but thinking about the past. So all these sort of like time transitions or time, different times in terms of like the memories, thoughts, flashbacks, that's starting calling up to how we're going to approach the visual look. In my case, I partnered up, with Ramin, our director, and Sean Peters. Basically, they started like working on our first episode. So they were the ones who started like developing the whole look and the whole, storyline in terms of like the visual effects. Then I got in as an alternative DP, and I just was able to just start grabbing, what they were just, designing and talking about, and then also get some input about, what I was reading, what I was getting, and translating into what was our visual language and our tools, that we were going to use depending on the stages of his mental state, to say so, like where he was in that part of the story.
And you really feel the different mental stages of him, like as the series goes throughout, visually as well as in terms of the story. What were some of those sort of tools and techniques that you used?
One of the first conversations that we were having with Ramin was that he wanted to have it, we wanted to do it mechanically. There was a very, very clear concept of not using ICG. I think there were very, very little like DFX and ICG done. Some of the parts were rejuvenation. But besides that, we wanted to treat all of those stages of his mind mechanically. And that means through lighting and lenses. So we have like a couple, like more than a couple, that we have different sets of lenses, or this one lens in particular that we were going to use for this particular stage of his mind, and then another type of lens or technique to be used for another stage. So I really like that. That was one of the things that got me really excited, that just like try to think of how we can do things mechanically without any ICG, and just like getting to the state of mind that, Ptolemy was living through our story.
And since the series is based on Walter Mosley's novel, who also wrote the series, were you able to take visual inspirations and guidance from the book?
Yes, I actually read the book, and the first thing, like when I got the project, was reading the book. So that was really interesting because the book is also very visual. Walter Mosley, wrote this story describing, like where he was, what he was seeing. So that really helped us when we were that helped me first to understand the story, and then reading the scripts, how that translated, which they did a fantastic job. And that was very helpful also to understand the character and being able to make it justice through our cinematography tools, and just back that state of mind with our job.
Since so much of Ptolemy Gray is about how memory functions, did it make you think about how you visualize or experience your own memories, and how you could capture that sort of subjective experience for Ptolemy?
Yes, it's very interesting how you start thinking about, in particular, sometimes when you're like, oh, why I'm in the kitchen? Why I was in the kitchen for where? Why, like I'm supposed to come to the kitchen, and that's, you read about it and it's normal, it's about being distracted or not. But then you start really thinking about how important like our brain is, or memories, or how it is, and how you kind of feel like some compassion and sympathy for the person that is going through that. And that is very important to understand when we're doing a story like this, because I know the reason that Walter Mosley and then Sam Jackson wanted to do this story is because in their families, there's someone that has been living with some sort of like Alzheimer's or dementia. And it's very important to think about that and be trying to understand that when you're doing a story about, in a way, losing your memories, losing your mind, losing your thought process, you losing your, your brain. So that's very important. That was very important for me to understand and to take it in order for us to portray, to help, visually the story.
Now, the interior of Ptolemy's apartment is really sort of important to this visual storytelling because it sort of tells us a lot about, who he is and how he's living. What was the approach to that space as it changed over the course of the series?
The approach was taken over from the very beginning from our production designer and Ramin, our director of the pilot. And it was very clear when and how, and it had like an arc. Like if their mind, like at the very beginning, when he, we see him, literally losing his mind, like the clutter on this space. And wow, the space reflects how his mind has, gotten clear. So when his mind started getting clear and he got the injection of he got help, first he got help. But then, what? It was a reflection of his mind, how this place started to get decluttered. And that was really interesting. That was mapped out from the very beginning what happens and when this place is going to start getting, cleaner and the clutter to support and what part of his life he was in terms of his memory.
And among the flashbacks of the show are the 1970s period when Ptolemy is younger and falling in love with Sensia. What were some of the visual techniques for creating that sense of the 1970s? Were they significantly different from capturing the present day?
Yeah, that part of that episode was done by Sean Peters, the other cinematographer. So I'm gonna speak on his behalf. I'm gonna tell you what he did in that part. First, there was this testing with Sam Jackson, like the scanning of his body, taking photographs, very detailed of what is his actual factions with that, not character, and then through VFX, how far they can take this rejuvenation with their tools that they have, the digital tools. So I think they have to rejuvenate it between 30 to 40 years. And that was a process. And the process was also involved wardrobe. How do we make this person look 30 years, younger? And it got to be but when Ptolemy Gray was older, his clothing was a little bit 2 sizes bigger, things like that, a lot more layers, not only, the scrappy here and whatever, but then when you want to make it younger, now he has more fitted, outfits. You have the suits and you have the shirts and you have all of that. And that helped a lot. That's some of the things that they were into mine. But in terms of the rejuvenation and making it 1970s, it's about those tools that they did, and also focusing on maybe just his face. Maybe we don't want to show him in that t-shirt because that involves a lot more time and a lot more, you got to build more muscles, and things like that. But definitely there was a whole, not conversation, but the whole thought process and production process of how to make that 70s look. Also the changing of the word, not the wardrobe, the space, Ptolemy space, changed. There had to be a whole new colors, new furniture, to think that 30 years before we met our character Ptolemy, the furniture was different, things were different in his apartment. So those are, some of the things that happened that has not only to do with the lenses or, the digital effects that we did, but also the other departments that helped to create that 1970s look, to just portray the, the 30 years gap or the 40 years gap between that and when he met Cynthia.
And there are also more distant flashbacks to when Ptolemy was a child and experiencing a lot of traumatic events, with a lot of night scenes with that incorporate fire. How did you capture those scenes?
Those were really, I loved, to have the experience to do that, because at the beginning it felt a little bit haunting. We were just shooting in the middle of nowhere. It was really exciting to see that we have the whole town built. That was sort of a backlog, like the whole Ptolemy's village was built. And from there, then we have to check, how we're gonna get the special effects with fire, how do you expose for fire? How do you light the background for fire? Because one of the things that, was very interesting, I started, to think when I was just planning all of that is like, if you expose for fire, what if the background would just go back to black and you lose the detail? So there were a couple of tests involved, like Sean and me were like in the backlog of the stages, Eagle Rock stages here at Atlanta, checking out and making tests about like the fire, not only the fire that you create with gas, to the fire that we had torches, and we wanted to do that naturally. Like the main source or key will come from these torches, lighting their faces without any other support of lighting, no artificial lighting. We thought about that. There were a couple of things that we just had over additional lighting just in the back to create a fire effect, but it's definitely a combination. And there was a lot of planning into that. There was a lot of meetings. There was a lot of conversation on how we're gonna make those night scenes as natural as possible, as believable as possible, but also in a way that we can see what our characters' emotional part, are living, because that's a very important part of the story. And like you said, it's traumatic. I can't find the word right now, but I can't find the word right now, but I'll tell you, I'll keep the word in a second. But yeah, it basically was a very traumatic scene that we have to treat it with a lot of respect, and we have to treat it as fairly as it is, because it was a fact that affected our character during his entire life.
And in the present day, especially those scenes, Ptolemy's apartment building has that striking yellow facade. Like, what was it like, capturing that and bringing that into the visuals?
That was really great. That was not only like his facade, like in the yellow. The whole street was, design and production, and the entire street was painted in this kind of like colorful tones, and to just to support a little bit, the type of neighborhood that Ptolemy was living, and also to portray the neighborhood and to support his emotional state of the street.
And was there a scene or sequence in the series that you're especially proud of shooting?
Yeah, I really like the scene that he's coming out of like the hotel, and he had like, actually starts before like that. The sequence that I like is he has this, it's not a flashback. He kind of like thinks that Petey Boy is there. He goes back to the cabin, like Coy Dog is there. And then we have this transition that was done with just like a pen, like a fast pen. And that's our transition. And then he comes out of like that scene from Coy Dog saying, aren't you forgetting something? There's one thing you got to remember. And he's like, I don't know what I have to remember. And like, you got to remember something. So he gets completely like disoriented. He gets out of the hotel. Everything is moving around. And I like it because we use different lenses. I wanted to flare the lens. not only about moving the camera and him like acting like he's disoriented, it was supporting like type of like getting a flare. And that was a transition to like his youth after the lynching, and that was also important. So I like how all the pieces, come together until finally Bert find her, like his niece finds her. So that sequence involved a lot of things. It involved like lighting, it's like having really dimly, just the same way with like oil lamps. Like again, like we try to use things that they were not try to support it with artificial lighting with our lights, but just like, okay, let's do this. And then the exterior shot, like just try to, that particular day, I didn't want to just bring any contours or anything. I was just like, the hotel has enough lighting. And that's one of the things that are really positive of the digital world, that I actually walk there in this gallery and I'm like, we are actually going to turn lights off here. And I'm not going to bring any supporting lighting, but just very few things. The building of a fire had to do it in the parking lot, and I liked it. It was really nice. We had to do it there. We just like put, your gaffer brain, to work, and other people like, we want to do this. And I think it worked out really nice, and I feel very, very proud about that.
Well, I want to congratulate you on your work in the series, and it really all comes through when watching it, and I really appreciate you talking with me about it. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you for letting me share, our experience in the Ptolemy Gray.